been elected by the CII's National Council as the president of CII for this year. And the president designate elected was Mr. TV Narendran yesterday, and Sanjiv Bajaj was elected as the vice president. And all of you know these three gentlemen pretty well. But just to mention that all the three of them have been very well involved with CII over the last many years. Mr. Kotak has been associated with CII now for more than 20 years, actually, and has served in many capacities in the CII, especially in the national level. And he has been the chairman for quite some time of our Economic Affairs Council, guiding the economic work of CII, besides the Financial Sector Development Council, which he headed for quite some time as the chairman. Then the entire Services Sector Council was something that he was leading as a chair. Then, of course, a very important initiative that he, within the CII, as well as when he handled many portfolios which was assigned to him by the government on corporate governance, and also committees like the Banking Committee, Capital Markets Committee, Financial Services Committee over the last 20 odd years, as you know. And of course, you know very well about Mr. Kotak's business forays, for which I will not therefore get into. TV Narendran again has been with the CII for many years actually. He was the state chairman of Jharkhand and the regional chairman of the CII Eastern region, and during the year 2016-17. And he has also led the national committees on many areas. Steel, of course, he has been involved with, and areas like the human resource development, leadership, that he has given leadership to see that within the CII. And Sanjiv Bajaj, of course, again comes very much from, if one can say, a CII background. Mr. Bajaj has been involved again in CII, and he was just he finished his term as a CII Western Region chairman, and he was a chairman for 2019-2020, and he has led many national committees also, the Insurance and the Pension Committee, the CII Task Force on FinTech, besides being involved in many task forces. And again, you know these people pretty well in terms of the business that they have done. The way we have structured this, friends, is we will have Mr. Uday Kotak to present the theme that has been discussed within CII, which will be led by Uday in the next 1 year's time, as to what would be the CII, what would be the priority sector areas of CII. And thereafter, we will, of course, have a question-answer session where all of us will participate along with Uday, who would lead the discussions of the Q&A. So with that, I would request Uday Kotak, the new CII president, to present to the media the theme and for priorities of CII for the year 2020-21. Uday.
Thank you, Chandrajit, and good morning, friends. I'm happy to be doing this virtual meeting in this new world and in uncharted times. And in that context, I wanted to first share with you the fact that CII had its annual session of 125 years day before yesterday, and we were honored to have the Prime Minister be the chief guest for that event. And we are enthused by the Prime Minister's confidence and commitment to building India and getting growth back. And I would like to share that we at CII are committed to an Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is competitive and engaged with the rest of the world. And in that context, friends, after the annual session, before we decided the final strategy and the theme for CII for the current year, we had an internal National Council meeting with 180 business leaders together and debated on our theme and strategy for the year ahead. This is a unique year and therefore a time for us to think out of the box. Our theme for 2020-21 is building India in a new world, lives, livelihood, growth. And friends, this is truly a transformational time as we go through this period. Normally, at our first briefing with media after the appointment of new leadership team, we normally present the estimates and outlook for GDP and economic parameters. Taking a turn from the past, we have decided this year not to predict GDP. Frankly, no one knows. It is all estimates and guesstimates, and the real world will pan itself out through this year. And we therefore are going beyond numbers and just putting numbers on assumptions which are very difficult to predict, to really going to the heart of the matters which will be important for us in the context of building India for a truly new world. And therefore, we have decided the theme to have 10 lenses of how we will look at in terms of being a part of India's development, building and growth story in the years ahead. At the National Council, we have also collectively, along with my colleagues, Narendran and Sanjiv, and of course, CB, we have decided to have a medium-term outlook for strategy, because in building India for the new world, it is a continuum of strategy and not just this year. Therefore, CII comes out with a game plan, which is, of course, taking cognizance of the short term, but also building India for the medium term as we go forward. And with this unanimity in our leadership team, I'm happy to announce the 10 lenses through which CII would like to chart its strategy for growth and development of our nation, keeping in mind the strong message and direction which we have received from the Prime Minister of India. And here are our 10 important parts of the strategy. First is protecting lives and livelihoods. COVID-19 is probably a once-in-a-century event. It has taken all of us by surprise in a sense and off guard. And this is true for the entire world. And as we stand here today, we realize that COVID-19 has significant challenges in terms of the impact on lives through the virus itself. And there has been a massive loss of lives around the world. India is relatively fortunate that the total number of deaths as a percentage of our population is amongst the lowest in the world. Having said that, we need to guard and protect Indians against the loss of lives because of the virus. The second part of that is, as a part of that strategy, we have decided to have a lockdown from 24th of March. And lockdown, again, is complicated, certainly needed to reduce the speed of transmission of the virus, but has an impact in terms of potential impact to livelihoods. And it is here that we need to constantly ask ourselves, how do we get this balance between loss of lives through the virus versus potential loss of lives through loss of livelihood? And the government, and we will work with the government to find the right balance between these two very, very challenging situations. The issue about the lockdown is also getting in is easy. Getting out is like getting out of a Chakravyuh. And it is complicated. We have started lockdown 1.0. We have started opening up 1.0, and the gradual process of opening up is underway. But there are complexities. And along with those complexities run the risk of loss of livelihoods. And therefore, we really need to redefine our strategy into what effectively is three worlds. The first world, which is what I would say prior to March 2020, I call it as the BC world. I'm borrowing from Thomas Friedman. BC world is before Corona. We are now preparing for the AC world. which is after Corona. And we are addressing and discussing this in the DC world, which is during Corona. So we need to get a fair harmonization of the three worlds which we are in. DC is behind us and things will change from the BC world. DC is the present and AC is hopefully our future. The big question in everybody's mind is how long is the DC world where Corona still continues with, at this stage, no significant cure in sight, nor a vaccine round the corner. So in this backdrop, the first challenge for all of us Indians is protecting lives and livelihoods and getting that balance right as we struggle across the world through that challenge. Second, we are redefining priorities for India. And we are now bringing right to the top the priority of healthcare and education. One of the things which you come into the middle of this whole process of COVID-19, we realize that our investment in healthcare needs to be significantly stepped up from current 1.3% of GDP. I think about health and healthcare for our future like the defense of India. Just as we have significant commitment to spending for India's military defense, time has come for us to significantly upgrade India's health defense against any enemy which comes forward. And therefore, investing in the whole healthcare chain, sanitation, upgrading the quality of health professionals, the facilities, the infrastructure, the distribution across the country, and a whole host of things, including e-medicine and getting digital as a core part of healthcare is also important. And therefore, we need to reimagine India from the lens of healthcare. And on behalf of CII, I would strongly reprioritize the nation's investment in healthcare to a significant extent at some level right at the top of our charts in terms of priority. We also need to build a sustainable foundation for our future. We need education. We need to get best-in-class quality of our doctors, nurses. It's just not the number of degrees which we have given out to medical professionals. It is the quality, it's quality of our medical research, it's quality of the people we have, including the new world of technology. And therefore, CII puts healthcare and education as the topmost priority for India's future as we build India in this new world. The next important priority, friends, is again something which you would consider as out of the box from the point of view of an economic institution like CII. And the next important priority, friends, is Mother Nature. Mother Nature has demonstrated its power, whether it's COVID, whether it is the cyclones which have hit both the east and the west coast of India, whether it is locust attacks, or whether in the COVID period, the cleanliness of our skies and the air, which demonstrates that the world over, we have taken liberty with Mother Nature, which needs to be significantly corrected. And climate change and sustainability are an integral part of us handling the issue of significant harmony for us humans on this planet with Mother Nature. And whatever we need to invest for our future, Mother Nature has to be at that top in our medium-term perspective of building India for a new world. So as I look at these top three priorities, which is immediate, protecting lives and livelihood, significant focus on investment in healthcare and education, and reharmonizing humanity with healthcare are something which are very dear to all our hearts and I can share this not only on my behalf and my leadership team, but the entire National Council of CII. Moving forward, friends, for doing all this, we will need to spend money. And that brings us to a very crucial balancing act between our ability as a country to do fiscal spending versus financial stability. And on that, I would like to say that India is fortunate. On the external account, India's position is very strong. Our current account deficit for the year 2021 is likely to be zero. We have been significantly helped by oil and sharp drop in gold imports. And at the same time, we sit with very significant foreign exchange reserves. Therefore, unlike 2013, when India was amongst the fragile five in the world, on the external count, India is in a good macroeconomic stable situation. However, as India will spend more and as fiscal deficit inevitably expands because of shortfalls in revenue, India will run higher fiscal deficits. And the internal fiscal challenges for financial stability will be an issue which we will have to balance between our aspiration to deal with the pandemic and therefore protect Indians and Indian business, at the same time ensuring financial stability. A warning shot, as we are aware, was fired by Moody's a few days ago. It's my view is, finally, while ratings are a matter of opinion, what is contained in the ratings is something which we need to keep in mind so that we don't have a sharp increase in costs of borrowings by Indians and Indian companies from the overseas markets, as also sharp withdrawal of money should there be significant drop in financial stability parameters. Having said that, India will have to spend boldly and find the resources to meet the challenges which we are in. But overall, a fair balance between fiscal deficit increase and maintaining financial stability are something which will be an important lens for looking at our medium term and the short term aspirations. Fifth, COVID-19 has impacted three important economic agents. First is directly the individuals and businesses. Therefore, an individual whose job is impacted or a business which finds a very sharp drop in its revenue will suddenly flounder at a time like this. Therefore, there is an impact cost coming out of the virus and the subsequent lockdowns. So the first impact cost from an economic agent point of view is individuals and businesses. Thereafter, the impact on the government. And the government takes a significant economic cost out of this. If we go back to the fiscal deficit center and state, which was presented in February, the most analysts anticipated the combined fiscal deficit center plus states at around 6.5% of GDP. Instead, now, most analysts expect that this number, including the economic package which has been announced by the government, will take this number to somewhere around 11 to 12% of GDP. So this increase is something which is already factored in. The question is, will this be enough? Will the government have to take even more costs for protecting, and how does it balance with the earlier point of deficit versus stability? It probably needs to spend more. And we have to figure out where we draw the line. But to the extent that the fiscal deficit goes from, say, 6.5% to 11.5% of combined GDP, of combined fiscal deficit as a percentage of GDP, a 5 percentage point increase in deficit is increase of loss of the government by 10 lakh crores. So that is the financial impact which the government, center and state, as of now, looks like it is taking because of the pandemic. And the third part of this economic agent is what I call as the residual but significant player, which is the financial sector. Therefore, to the extent that individuals and businesses cannot absorb the shock, or the government is unable to protect these businesses and individuals from the shock after the significant increase in their deficits, the balance impact inevitably comes on the financial sector. And here, the fragility of the financial sector needs to be kept in mind, and the need for having a solid risk capital base for the Indian financial sector is key for our future. And therefore, we need to carefully calibrate how the pain is distributed in this era of the pandemic between individuals and businesses, the government, and the financial sector. So that is my point number 5. Point number 6, COVID changes the balance. That's today's meeting in the virtual world which we are having is a demonstration of that change. If we were in the erstwhile physical world, Sanjiv, Narendran, and I would have got up in the morning, taken a plane from the airport to come to Delhi, then after landing at the Delhi airport, taken a car, come to a place where Chandrajit would have asked us to meet before the press meet, which most likely would be either CII office or a hotel. And thereafter, after initial physical meeting, which we may have had, we would have had a physical meeting with all of you, which of course would be carried on both physically and electronically. But COVID has changed that, and we can see this in front of our eyes. So how does the balance between the physical world and digital world impact our future? And it is this change which we need to factor in terms of reimagining and rebuilding our future in the post-COVID world. And what does it do to the future of office space, malls, the balances between e-commerce and real-world shopping, the nature of jobs, the significant need for skilling, and the need for significantly upgrading our investments in science, technology, and digital, skilling our people in the digital world are all the challenges. We are also fortunate that we have phenomenal broadband connectivity. Therefore, every village of India can take advantage of digital. And in that perspective, I must compliment Prime Minister's vision many years ago that digital is the core to India's future. We can see it play out today, and working from home is entirely feasible thanks to technology and digital, which is a part of our lives. So we need to calibrate the impact on the economy and use the right levers to push economic growth, keeping in mind a fundamental rebalancing between the physical world and the digital world, which is a part of the new world order going forward. Next, point number 7, future of jobs and social security. The need for reskilling, the need for getting people to be future ready for this new world. And I talked about the priority on education, which is certainly a medium-term requirement. But jobs may not be the same as they are. And we need to recalibrate this world. And there is a risk that some of the jobs may change forever. How is the society and how is policy going to deal with the issues of social security and fairness to the citizens of India? It's a very important policy question which needs debate, and it will come to the forefront in the times ahead as India builds for this new world. Next, rural-urban rebalance. Friends, in my life, I've always grown up all the way to now, where migration was traditionally from rural to urban. And as more and more people moved out of agriculture and sought opportunity, it was coming to a big city. I recollect the famous Raj Kapoor movie, which said, Mumbai, the Jadui Nagri. It attracted everybody, including people for wanting to come and become movie stars. Cities were the engine for migrants to come and make a living and create opportunity. This was the core of how India was, rural to urban. For the first time in my life and our lives, we have seen reverse migration. We have seen urban moving to rural. People who came to cities with hope and aspiration and who continued to work for many years, some of them in slums with very poor working conditions and insecurity of permanent jobs, but still trudged along because the income levels for them were higher than what they got back in their villages. They went through huge struggles and lived in cities despite all the urban infrastructure challenges many cities had. Some of them have asked the tough question, is this life in the manner in which we have lived worth living? I am okay with lower income, but I want to go back to my village and be with my family. I will figure a way out. This is a new reality, friends, and we need to deal with this and recognize this. I am therefore looking at this as us recalibrating our base assumptions. How do we get opportunities in rural? The good news now compared to the past is the phenomenal connectivity of rural India as well, as I mentioned. Can we create jobs? Why can't a person in rural India sitting in a village with good connectivity get a job at Google? Why can't we dream of creating the whole concept, in addition to focusing on making India the manufacturing hub? Why not think about making India the office of the world, whether it is from a city or a village? Connectivity is there. Reimagination is something which we need to put to work. And in that context, friends, we also need to see how do we get more rural jobs, rural infrastructure, spend agricultural productivity, and the whole host of opportunities which a rural and a cleaner part of India. It is not crowded. It does not have slums. It is a better lifestyle. How do we create the opportunity out of a adversity where so much of migration has happened in the last few months? How do we transform this to making a lot of rural India the engine for the future of India? I see a very significant ability to retransform our future in this part of the country. Ninth, we have 4 levers of growth: investment, consumption, net exports, and government spending. If I look at the last many years, we have been disproportionately dependent on government spending, followed by consumption as the core of our growth. The 2 areas which we need to buck up on are the areas of private investment and exports. Entrepreneurs need to get that animal spirit back. And in that context, the PM's comfort that we will get growth back should be a bugle sounded for all entrepreneurs to think about how we can invest and take the risks. And the government is a partner with us in building this future. Private investment is going to be the key for us to get sustainable growth back. Yes, in the short run, we need steps for getting demand back, but getting demand back without dramatically increasing supply over a period of time is not a sustainable strategy. And finally, if we are truly competitive, if we are truly Atmanirbhar, our exports must flourish. We must be competitive out there to be able to compete in the export market with the best quality nations of the world. And therefore, getting the 2 levers of growth, investment and exports, is the key for our future. And finally, after all these points, friends, if there's one thing which is clear to me and all of us at CII, for India's future, growth is an imperative. It is a non-negotiable point. We have to go out there, grow India, transform ourselves, and not be cowed down by what is happening in the immediate COVID era. Let us start thinking about the AC era while we are still in DC, and have the courage and conviction that India as a nation will shine out, and it is up to us as all responsible members of society, collectively as Indians, to make this dream happen. And friends, this entire 10 points which I have discussed comes in the backdrop of something I have deeply believed in. I call it, in simple language, governance. And governance is doing things right and doing the right things. And this importance of governance is, of course, certainly for companies. But I think it's a broader issue of governance of the nation. We want this aspect of governance in all our public bodies, in all our public institutions, to be accountable, to govern with niti, to govern with aspiration, and to transform India. Governance of society at large is an extremely important set, and governance of companies is a subset of this larger governance framework India needs to continue to improve on. We have seen significant improvements in the last many years, but there is a long way to go for us to be at cutting edge of governance for our future. And in that context, I think getting the balance between the big and the small. The big also needs protection and from the shocks in a positive manner, but big also need to protect the smaller companies like the MSMEs, creating a vendor chain, getting a supply chain, holding the hands as we build towards a better future for India. And I will end by saying that the Prime Minister's 5 Is, intent, inclusion, investment, infrastructure, and innovation, ring a bell with all of us at CII, and we are deeply committed to building an India in the years ahead as all Indians collectively aspire to better life and a better quality of living. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much, Uday. Thank you very much. The president of CII has made his remarks on how he would really carry forward the theme that has been coined for the year 2020-21 for CII. We'll open up this for questions from our media friends, and I have already a few requests which has come to me, and I'll start with PTI Roopsri Nair.
Congratulations, Mr. Kotak, on taking over as the new president of CII. I wanted to ask you, you already said that in a departure from past tradition, you are not revealing growth estimates. But global rating agencies have already revealed growth estimates, and they have said that India's growth is set to contract. Do you concur with them? What is your view on this? Because you said that these are all guesstimates. So would you call this a guesstimate? What is your view on this? And if you agree on this, have you carved out a roadmap to achieve these objectives for getting growth back as your theme suggests?
Thank you very much. I think it's a very relevant question on the minds of all of us. It is fair to reasonably presume that in the current year, considering that we've had a long lockdown through April and May, which is a very disproportionate shock coming out of COVID, that for the current year, the estimates on the negative side may have veracity. However, how much negative it is something which only time will tell, and to an extent, it depends on how the recovery also happens. Therefore, to assume that there may be some negative growth for the year is a reasonable assumption. However, when I am sort of looking at putting the foundations, it is not just growth for this year as a whole, which is an average. We need to see month by month how growth is coming back. And that is what matters. For example, electricity consumption in May is significantly better than April. Look at the FASTag data on commercial traffic on highways. May is better than April. And therefore, I would not look at growth as an average for the year. This is granular, month on month, how we are building steps towards getting our growth back. And therefore, my request to all of us, including media, is to think about growth far more modularly than an average for the year. And I would rather look at the trend line every month and every quarter. And I am reasonably hopeful the trend line quarter after quarter should be up from the previous quarter's numbers. And where do we reach by the end of the year is a question on everybody's mind. And I'm not saying that any of us has an idea of where it is, but I would just like to highlight that if you look at most of the world, and including an estimate for the world by the Economist magazine, they had a title story called A 90% World, which means in many areas, we may not be able to get to what we were earlier. On the other hand, there will be newer areas, particularly digital and technology oriented, which may be above the 100% world of the past. And therefore, the average and the weighted average of these two, that is parts of the world which will be parts of the economy which will be negative versus parts of the economy which will probably be better than the past, will give us an average. But advice to PTI and all of you is measure growth modularly and granularly, and request to stay away from averages.
But just a related question, Mr. Kotak, how long will it take for the economy to recover to pre-COVID levels? Have you made an estimate of that?
We will make an estimate during the year, and we will have a meeting with you again when we have greater clarity on how the year is going. So this is still early days. We are only 2 months into the year, and we are just beginning to come out of the lockdown. So opening up 1.0 is happened after lockdown 4.0. So as we go forward, we will be able to give you a greater prediction about how we see the year. But at this stage, considering the significant impact of COVID in the first 2 months of the year, it would be reasonable to assume that we may have an average which may be negative. But I would like to see trend growth getting to normalcy at least by end of the year.
Thank you. We'll move on, and can we have Ritu Singh from the CNBC now, please?
Yeah. And Mr. Kotak, you said the pain has to be calibrated between three sections, three economic agents of the economy, including the financial system. Today, the Supreme Court has reprimanded the Reserve Bank of India for battling against, interest waiver during the moratorium period. If you could get your thoughts on the same, I mean, should the overall well-being of people and their ability be put above the economic health of financial institutions?
Ritu, while of course we respect the Supreme Court, the matter is still under hearing, and I think no decision has been taken by the Supreme Court. All that I would say is that the Reserve Bank of India has put in a very clear position from its side, and I think that is absolutely the key. Please keep in mind that banks are intermediaries between depositors' monies and borrowers. So if we have a situation that borrowers get moratorium, banks have an obligation to serve depositors both on principal plus interest. Therefore, we cannot have a one-sided contract where we allow moratoriums on interest to the borrowing side. And of course, banks have a fundamental obligation to pay principal and interest to the depositors. Therefore, it cannot be an unequal game. People who are asking for moratorium on interest, please keep in mind that you also happen to be depositors somewhere. Therefore, do not think about saying moratorium on what I borrow, but I must get my full interest on deposits. If the banks have to serve borrowers, it has a bigger duty to serve depositors. Depositor is the core for the financial system. The trust and confidence of the depositor must be nurtured and protected, because that is the foundation of a stable financial system. And I am a believer that the Indian financial system is sound and robust because the Reserve Bank of India has always protected the depositor's interest, which is the core basis and intent of the Banking Regulation Act.
if I could also get your comment on the fact that you said that the government needs to spend more. It's announced that you said the government needs to spend more. Fiscally spending in balance with financial stability. We've already seen the Atmanirbhar package. I think enough has been debated on how little or more has to be spent. But beyond these measures that have been announced, what do you think can immediately be done to restore confidence, especially in the light of that moody downgrade that is coming?
Ritu, the need, as I said, first of all, in terms of what the government is already at, most economists are estimating that the combined fiscal deficit is probably already around 11.5% of GDP. Therefore, compared to the original budget estimates, effectively, whether it is in terms of lower revenues or whether it's fiscal stimulus, the government has already spent 10 lakh crores more at 5% of GDP. And from here, it has to figure out what are the priorities, where it wants to spend, and have a rifle approach to getting it right. I must also mention, and I must compliment the government on its MSME guarantee scheme. With the latest modifications which have been announced, the MSME scheme looks very viable, and banks, I have confidence the banks will be able to use the 3 lakh crores to be out there to support MSMEs based on the guarantee by the government. And therefore, that is real. That may not be hitting this year's fiscal deficit because it's a guarantee, but it's a real ability for banks to go out and lend 3 lakh crores to micro, small, and medium enterprises. Additionally, thanks to the comfort and guarantee given by the government. And it gives the MSME a chance to stand up and restart or begin its business.
Thank you. Thank you. Srivats, Business Line, HBL. Srivats, will you unmute yourself?
Yeah. Good morning. Am I audible?
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Morning, Mr. Kotak. Congratulations on your new role. I had a couple of questions. One, you spoke about the need for private investments to come back to the main stage to lift growth. So, are there any solutions on the table from CII on how private investments can come back into the economy? And second question that I have is on the aspect of would you recommend RBI looking at a one-time restructuring, say at the end of the moratorium period, to ease up the situation on the financial system? And my last question to you is, given the tight fiscal situation that the government is in right now, would you advocate that government look at the earlier planned reform of raising money in offshore markets?
I think 3 questions. First question, which is private investment, I will ask my colleague Narendran, who is the managing director of Tata Steels and represents the House of Tata, one of the largest investors in India, to give his perspective on private investment, how he sees it from the point of view of the economy. And the second question, I will request Sanjiv Bajaj, since he is an integral part of the financial sector as well, on his views on RBI. And on the third part, I will give my comments as well. So Narendran and Sanjiv.
Thank you, Uday. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. So I think private investments, yes, have been weak over the last few years. And a lot of the capital invested has been from the government and public sector over the last few years. That's a fact. To me, there are 2-3 factors which are important to get private investment back. Firstly, demand growth. And obviously, last year, the economy had slowed down a bit. And this year, we have COVID. So I think the actions taken by the government to spend on infrastructure and to start creating demand by allowing more liquidity into the system, I think that's one thing which is important. The second thing which helps private investment is the profitability of the industry, because obviously if you have surplus cash flows, if you're profitable and there's demand growth, then you have surplus to invest. I think we need to get these two conditions back, and then certainly there will be private sector investment, because fundamentally India is macroeconomically in a good place. It's a growing economy. It's a consumption-led economy, which is shifting a bit to an investment-led economy with public sector investments. So I'm positive over the medium to long term. Last year and this year have been tough. The other factor to keep in mind is a lot of the restructuring has happened in capital-intensive sectors, like in steel and power, which has accounted for a bulk of the investments over the last few years. But one has also seen investments happening in oil and gas and in some of the other sectors. And I'm positive that over the medium to long term, you'll see investments come back in sectors like cement and steel, which will be driven by the spend of the government in infrastructure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Sanjeev, the second question was on one-time restructuring, whether RBI should allow it or not without it being considered as NPL.
Thanks, Uday. I was just unmuting. As we know that the RBI has now allowed moratorium for the first 3 months and thereafter for the next 3 months. This in general allows everyone, as we are aware, the option to take this moratorium if it helps them through this time of tight liquidity. There is, of course, a cost that comes with it, because there is an interest that has to be paid through this period, which would get charged on the remaining term of the loan or with a higher rate going forward. Now, the question of moratorium, the question of restructuring is actually a very interesting question that CII has suggested to the RBI to evaluate it. We believe that on certain type of loans, maybe short tenor, small value loans, this may not be required, but there could be loans, whether to MSMEs, to mid-sized corporate, where a one-time restructuring, which is really at the, I would say, available to the lender, to the bank, to the NBFC to give, wherever there is merit. This is something that could make a positive difference. So we are hoping that this is something that the RBI would take into account.
Yeah, and on your third question with reference to fiscal space, of course, the fiscal space is always a question. India is not a reserve currency country. Therefore, very often we compare with US and even European countries. Therefore, India has to keep in mind that we are still susceptible to the global forces. At the same time, India has to do what it takes. And we cannot, therefore, getting that equilibrium, as I call it, between doing what is necessary versus not upsetting the apple cart and finding new ways of creating longer term revenues for the country, including, like as an example, I think giving the guarantee concept for MSME. So the guarantee does not hit this year's fisc. That is one. Number two, 100% of the guarantee is unlikely to be a loss. Therefore, the final loss to the government may be a percentage of the 3 lakh crores guarantee given, and will hit over time in future years, 3, 4, 5 years. I thought that was a very innovative way of going out and supporting the economy while not loading the fisc in the short run. So stuff like that is what we need to think of.
So if I may add, I was asking you about whether is there a case for Indian government to raise foreign currency loans?
You know, I think India's foreign exchange reserves are very comfortable. Domestic liquidity is excellent. Our external account, current account deficit is close to zero. Therefore, we need to be very careful before rushing into foreign currency loans. Because one of the things that, I mean, if you just look at the Indian government securities markets, now after the Moody's downgrade of India, the 10-year GSEC is around the same level as it was before the downgrade. On the other hand, assuming we were a very large portion of our government securities listed on the global bond indices, some investors somewhere in the nook and some corner of the world would determine the bond price of Indian bonds, which would be completely outside the control of the country in a way. and you want foreign capital, I think we must be inviting to foreign capital. But we got to be careful that it is not volatile capital. And India has always maintained a discipline. It has encouraged a lot more equity capital, but has been more cautious on external debt. And as long as we can get that balance right, that's the way to think about it. Do not take too much of volatile short-term cash flows, which are flippant.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. We'll move on. And Tulika Bhatnagar from BBC. Just unmute yourselves, please. Yeah.
Hi, my question is for Mr. Kotak, and it's related to foreign investment and trade. There are two questions actually. One is India is largely seen as among the most protectionist countries in the world. And what, according to you, should be the immediate measures that the country should take if it wants to attract foreign businesses and investment? The other is related to China. Where does the current industry sentiment lie when it comes to bilateral trade with China? Because China constitutes nearly 9% of our exports, nearly 18 to 19% of our merchandise imports. But there is this current anti-China sentiment floating around, the tweaked FDI norms. In view of that, where does the current industry sentiment lie? Thank you.
Tulika, on the first question, if I just want to very categorically state that an Atmanirbhar Bharat or a self-reliant India has to be a competitive India. I am fundamentally of the view that the strength of our self-reliance has to be coming out of our competitiveness and not protectionism. So that is the first point. And I think the Prime Minister has also mentioned that. Therefore, we should be careful as a country, and we should be careful in terms of what external perception may be, that we build a self-reliant India which is competitive and engaged with the world. Therefore, our self-reliance has to be from a position of strength, not a position of weakness. So that is the answer to your first question. The second question is a much more tricky question in the global context today, which is China. There is two elephants fighting. Okay, we don't want to get into the crosshair of that fight. Okay, we've got to do what is right for our country and our people, and based on economics of where we are. Therefore, if there is unfair dumping based on non-transparent pricing, I think India will have to respond. But otherwise, we should be open to trade. And we should be open to be engaging with China, which is a solid global power today. And we must leverage that opportunity for trade, but not be treated unfairly. So wherever there is unfairness, we must act. But otherwise, we must be open to trade and grow that relationship. And there is something which I've always believed. We can always choose our friends. But for a country, it is not possible to choose our neighbor. We have the neighbors we have, and we have to accept them and find solutions with that.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you, Uday. I'll move on to Joe Matthew of the Business Today. Please go ahead, Joe, with your question.
Hi, good morning.
Yes.
Hello?
Yes,
Yeah.
I can see you, Joe.
Yeah, Mr. Kotak, your 10 points looks like a medium-term strategy. I couldn't really find, a one-year plan in what you have said. So I assume that most of this 1 year would be in the DC period which you mentioned.
I wish I knew.
Okay. If you could tell me, since you said that healthcare and education has to be the first priority, what is it that the industry can do here? Or are we depending on the government to really look at increasing its spend?
Yeah, I think let me answer on your first point between medium term and short term. Okay, we have to always have a plan for the medium term. but ensure that we live in the short term. Therefore, we cannot only look at the medium term, we have to look at the short term. And therefore, the first point, which is the balance between lives and livelihoods, is a here and now issue. We need to address this now. How are we going to handle the lockdown? How are we going to ensure employment? How are we going to make sure that the virus is brought under control? Those are short-term issues now. So that is a clear DC world issue and something which needs to be addressed now. Similarly, digital and physical, that transformation is happening in the DC world. It is happening right now. Okay? And we need to address that right now. The challenge for us as society is that most of us, and this includes entire society and human nature, that we think about problems of the future. And I think we do it in our own lives. We will do it later. We will take care of it later. And sooner or later, the future becomes present. Therefore, let's look at Mother Nature. We have ignored it for so long, probably for a few decades. It's okay if we increase pollution. It's okay if we overcrowd cities. It's okay if we don't have healthcare facilities. We have done that because in the short run, it was not our priority. Okay? So at some point of time, at turning point of history, it is important to take a pause and say, I have to deal with the short run. I have no choice. But I start needing to put foundations for the long run. And I give the example of another healthcare situation, say a heart attack. Okay? When you have a heart attack, what you need is an immediate massage, not long walks. But once you're doing the immediate massage, you also have to have ways of making sure that you're building the health of the nation in the medium term as well. Both are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
You have talked about that, India can be the office of the world if companies shift to the rural India. Does it also mean that, we are giving up on being the manufacturing hub of the world, or, given the circumstances that manufacturing cannot shift the way that, you see services being moving to the Indian?
No, that's not what I said. I said, we must make in India. Okay. That is a clarion call. We have to do it. But that does not exclude that in addition to going out there and working to be the factory of the world, when a lot of people want to diversify out of China. So we must take that opportunity. But it is not either or. There is nothing stopping us from striving to be the factory of the world, but also aspiring to be the office of the world. And in today's times, what working from home has taught us, that whether you are in a suburb of US, or whether you are in the city of Mumbai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Delhi, or whether you are in a small town or village, if you have connectivity and if you have the knowledge and skill, you are as good as anyone else. So what a great equalizer the world has ability to provide to us today, thanks to technology. Therefore, we strive for being the factory of the world, but also work towards being the office of the world.
Thank you. We'll just move on. Many questions are already queued up. So Shailesh Yadav from ANI. Shailesh, just unmute, please.
हाँ सर, सर नमस्कार। सर मेरा एक सवाल ये है जो एकदम जमीन से जुड़ा हुआ है अभी, वो ये है कि जब मोदी जी ने बोला था कि लोगों को जो है सैलरी की दिक्कत नहीं होनी चाहिए, या जो है जॉब कट्स नहीं होने चाहिए, लेकिन अभी जो है कंपनी तमाम लोगों की मतलब तमाम तरह की जॉब कट कर रही हैं, सैलरी कट कर रही हैं। और अब ये प्रॉब्लम आ गई है, ज्यादातर शहरों में जो टेनेंट हैं, जो नौकरी पेशा लोग रहते थे, अब वो पुलिस केस बनता जा रहा है, क्योंकि वो जो है सैलरी वो किराया देने के लिए जो है सक्षम है नहीं, तो मकान मालिक उनको खाली कराना चाहते हैं। तो इस तरह के इश्यूज से किस तरह से CII जो है, क्या इंडस्ट्री को किसी तरह की रिक्वेस्ट करेगा या कैसे डील करेगा?
आपने जो पॉइंट कहा, हमारे 10 पॉइंट एजेंडा में वो एक पॉइंट है, डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ इकोनॉमिक पेन, जहां मैंने आपको समझाया कि देयर आर 3 पार्ट्स टू इट। सबसे पहला पार्ट है इंडिविजुअल और बिजनेसेस, उसमें एम्प्लॉयर एम्प्लॉई, लेसोर एंड लेसी। द tensions coming out of loss to the system. System में loss हुआ है, कौन भुगतेगा? It has to be one of the three economic agents, the individual or business, the government, and if both of them do not bear it or cannot bear it, financial system. तो ये तो appropriate reality balancing होगा, क्योंकि ये actual loss तो हुआ है ना, 2 महीना output नहीं हुआ है. That is reality for because of the virus. Okay, so ये sharing और pain जो है वो पूरी society में होगी. But if we find fair and reasonable basis of sharing the pain, तो आगे प्रोग्रेस हो सकता है. लेकिन ये तो गांव में आपने जो बात कही एब्सोल्युटली सही है, जमीन ऑन द ग्राउंड इश्यू है और इसका कोई इजी आंसर है ही नहीं. ईच सिचुएशन में we will have to see it, which is why I have also mentioned the future of jobs and need for social security. Time has come that as economic agents battle this out, long-term society will have to think about security of its people when such shocks happen. And that is a whole new debate which will come in. And in the global context, it is not as it is. There has been discussions, but at some point of time, social security, things like basic income for every Indian, issues like that will come up for debate as policy will undergo manthan in the next few months and years.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll move to Nayanthara Fichi now. Nayanthara, please unmute yourself.
Hi. Hi, Mr. Kotak, Mr. Narendran, Mr. Bajaj. Look forward to seeing a lot more of you this year, whether it's virtually or in person in New Delhi. If we can convince you guys to get on a flight. Thank you for everything. And Mr. Kotak, you've been making this point now, even on Twitter, how India needs to become the office of the world, and how growth is absolutely non-negotiable. What is different this time round when we battle this crisis, and while everybody might want to draw parallels to previous crisis, is the cushion that the RBI has, the lifetime high forex reserves. I want to ask all three of you, we still have not seen any Brahmastra being fired as such by the Reserve Bank of India. Some very good measures that have been done. We have the highest acceptance of the moratorium rate. I think Goldman Sachs is saying about 35%. What can the RBI do? What is the view of the CII when it comes to greater spending by the government, and what should the Reserve Bank of India be doing? Because Mr. Kotak, you have been saying in the past we've confused insolvency with liquidity, but this time liquidity is also leading to insolvency, and that's a big fear.
Okay, I think I'll first come to. I will go in the order of Sanjiv, Narendran, and then I will try and give my perspective. Sanjiv, because he also has chaired the NBFC committees and councils. So you have said that even now there are liquidity issues. So maybe Sanjiv, you want to first go about what is happening on that and this question about liquidity versus solvency, and then Narendran, because he has the manufacturing perspective of what he thinks more needs to be done from a policy, and then we'll wrap up between three of us. So Sanjiv, you want to go?
Nayantara, as we all know, that we are still just 2 months into this crisis, and as Uday mentioned earlier, the lockdown is only now opening. So if you think of the measures that have already been taken, the RBI has ensured that there is enough liquidity in the system. There was some worry then on moratorium to say that NBFCs, MFIs have to give moratorium to customers, but they are not getting that from banks. RBI took that up. That got discussed. That is available now. If you try to see what the government has done on the supply side by the liquidity, different liquidity pools, guaranteeing them, what Uday talked about, not only for MSMEs that have no defaults, but they've created a separate pool also for those that have been in default. This is to ensure, and by guaranteeing those, you're ensuring that banks and NBFCs that are sitting on liquidity are not risk averse to passing on that money. it goes without saying, it has to be done responsibly. This is not free money. End of the day, as Uday said, somebody has to pay for it. But at least you're creating those different pools of assets available for the people who need it. My own belief, and I'll have Naren and then Uday come back with their point of view. My own belief is the next few months are important to kickstart the economy. We have seen that if you put money too early in the hands of people, where they are still not comfortable about their own safety and security of moving out of their houses, offices are still not welcoming them, or they can't beyond a particular percentage of people, then that money gets saved rather than spent. I believe at the right time, within the limits that we can afford on the deficit side, if a small demand stimulus is made available for a short period of time, it can help convince and create confidence to the individual to go and start spending. But this also has to happen at a time when the rest of the economy can deliver to those requirements. So from RBI's point of view, I believe that they have not only taken a number of steps that are available to them. Look at where interest rates are currently, amongst it's the lowest that we have seen in any of our lifetime. But we have to keep in mind, and to the Brahmastra that you've talked about, you've even talked about it in the slowing economy in the past 12 months. I don't think there is a single Brahmastra, but there are multiple ones which need to be fired at the right time. Beyond that, naturally, we can't read RBI's mind, but that's my point of view.
Yeah. Thanks, thanks, Nayantara. I think I echo Sanjeev's comments. You cannot just depend on the RBI to solve the problem. I think they've done what they could from a monetary policy point of view. As Sanjeev said, the interest rates are low, liquidity has been infused in the system. I think a lot more action needs to be seen on the fiscal side, which the government has started taking. CII has been representing to the government over the last few months, and they've taken action on releasing payments to the MSME sector and to industry. But there's only that much the central governments can do. I think the state governments also need to release a lot of payments to the industry. That will help liquidity from that point of view. The second action that the government has already started taking is to spend on infrastructure, because I think that again is a great demand multiplier, because a lot of MSMEs are impacted by construction. A lot of semi-skilled and unskilled workers are impacted by construction. We are already seeing some impact of that in the rural economies. Certainly, if I look at activity in the last few weeks, it's been far more in rural economies than in the urban economies. Despite the fact that some of the largest states in terms of economic activity like Maharashtra and Gujarat have been struggling with the lockdown, there is a lot of activity in other parts of the country, may not be as much as it was pre-COVID, but we are seeing the impact of some of the government's actions. So I think spending on infrastructure, money flow from the government to the MSME sector to support what the steps RBI has taken will bring back the sentiment. And I think, as Uday said earlier, we are going through unlock one, and as more and more businesses open up, we are seeing the SME sector open up quite rapidly, week on week. A lot more companies coming back into action. I expect that consumption will start to grow, demand will start to grow, and we'll see the impact of all that.
And Nayantara, if I add to what Sanjeev and Narendran have said, let me first say that RBI has done quite a bit, okay? And it has had a significant level of moves in terms of interest rates, pumping liquidity into the system, giving moratorium for the borrowers. A hell of a lot of stuff has been done. Now, what they've done is they've taken different steps, and including having had pre-normal monetary policy meetings. So a lot of steps have been taken. But at a time like this crisis, and Nayantara, I will give you the example from music. I have been a sitar player. So I see the role of the government and the RBI like that of a jugalbandi between sitar and tabla. Both have to play in harmony and respect each instrument, but at the same time play together in a jugalbandi. And that's what I think is happening, and I'm sure it will happen even further in the future.
Thank you. Thanks. I'll move on. Sanjeet Mangat of Bloomberg.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Kotak, good afternoon. I have a question basically on the financial sector. We've seen you spoke about risk capital required in the financial sector. Has CII estimated what kind of what is capital that needs to be built up since individual businesses and government has. And the second thing is we've seen a flux of deposits moving away from private sector banks to the public sector banks. Uh, you know, but there's liquidity which is building up. So there is going to be a crisis which is coming in with respect to if moratoriums are extended. But my and the third one is on the manufacturing part of it. By when do you see manufacturing coming back in full steam? Do we need further investments in terms of supply chains, in terms of distribution, or in terms of any other infrastructure that is required to ensure that manufacturing is taken care of?
Thank you, Sajid. Very good questions. Let me first address the financial sector issue. Frankly, as we all know, at this point of time, we are working on a little bit of a cloudy road ahead in terms of how clouds are going to move out. Therefore, to predict the level of loan losses which the system will take based on previous precedents is not an easy thing. And the two precedents which we have in India are 2008-9 global financial crisis and 99 to 2001 Asian crisis and aftermath of that, where we saw a number of Indian financial institutions have serious systemic challenges in that period between 1999 and 2001. As far as this COVID period is concerned, it is still early days. But the way I would think about it is look at the macro financial sector, particularly the banking sector picture. We have a total banking sector loan book outstanding, which is about 100 lakh crores. And the total capital of the Indian banking system is between 11 and 12 lakh crores. Now, we can debate what the number of loss will be. Now, even if you take a hypothetical number, which is set 4 to 5 lakh crores over time, we are talking about, say, even a 4 to 5% hit. That is talking about a number which is 40% of capital. Some of it will be made up by bond gains, which most banks have on their MTM portfolios. Having said that, even after the gains, there will still be a need for risk capital. And I do believe that the government in its array and the bouquet will have to plan down the road some capital available for the public sector banks. And obviously, it will have to have some criteria and objective criteria that money, risk capital is well used and gets the growth without disproportionate loss to the system. So that is one part, which is the public sector banks. As far as private sector banks are concerned, as also NBFCs are concerned, I think we have had a very, very fine capital markets over the last few months. And capital markets are there as instruments for companies with good governance practices to be able to go out there and raise capital should they need risk capital. And therefore, the market mechanism is a great basis for beefing up risk capital for financial institutions. And my personal advice to all financial players is raise capital. Don't be too fussed about getting the nickel dime on the last rupee of pricing. Go out there, beef yourself up, do the right thing, and make things secure for you as a financial institution. And this is the good news. Through this entire period, global markets and Indian capital markets have been liquid and fully functioning. And I credit the government and all the regulators for ensuring the quality of our markets functioning through this, whether it is equity markets, whether it's the bond markets, whether it's the government securities markets. All the markets have functioned, and that's a great ability for raising capital.
Thanks, Sanjeev. Sanjeev, would you like to add anything on that? Okay, fine. Shubhra Tandon from the Financial Express. Shubhra Tandon, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah,
Yeah, my question is that, since private investments are so linked to the demand, and that is what we have seen has not been happening for years now. So, are there any steps that the CII is planning to propose to the government to see to it that the demand actually comes back for the private investments to flow in?
Yeah. Narendran, private investments.
Yeah. So, thanks, Uday. So, a couple of comments. There is some part of the demand which can be driven by the government expenditure, which I think the CII is represented to the government. The government is taking action. So, for instance, infrastructure expenditures are high on that list. Secondly, I'm seeing different parts of the government, like if you look at railways, they've been investing significantly over the last couple of years. Oil and gas sector has been investing because of the gas pipelines being laid across the country and the city gas distribution. We also see a lot of investments happening in water space because the Prime Minister has talked about piped water for all. So these are certainly areas where the government is spending, and that has a positive impact on demand. The second part of demand, which we see some activity happening, is a little bit more rural-led. We see construction in rural areas to be picking up faster than in urban areas. A lot of pent-up activities picking up because people want to complete jobs that they'd started and got stopped because of the lockdown. I also believe that some parts of automotive sector, like the tractor industry, is seeing positive signs. I'm seeing some positive signs in maybe the two-wheeler industry as people move more and more into personal mobility. So there are parts of demand where there are some green shoots, partly led by the government money flowing into the economy. But I think as the sentiments improve, you will see more private sector money flowing in to create demand. And investment will follow demand, and investment will follow a growth in profitability. And also the private sector has been deleveraging over the last couple of years. So the availability of liquidity, the moratorium and things like that should help. So CII's request to the government has been to do what the government can do, which is to release payments to the MSME sector, which has been to spend more on infrastructure. And I think the government has been supporting us on that.
So is there any timeline, sir, by when do you think that, the investments from the private sector will begin?
I think it all depends on how the pandemic plays out over the next few months. Certainly in India, we expect that by Q4, things should start getting back to normal if the pandemic doesn't get much worse and if there are no further lockdowns. Hopefully next year we will be, I won't say back to pre-COVID levels, but we'll certainly be back to positive growth, and that should create the positive sentiment. I think the other important thing is the government has been taking a number of steps to encourage investments in India for manufacturing. We saw that in electronics manufacturing, the policy changes that have been announced. More recently in air conditioners, the Prime Minister has been talking about that. So there are multiple areas where the government has identified where there is potential for foreign investment to come in and help local industry. Defense is another sector, and more recently the food processing sector. So I think there are multiple areas where the government has made significant policy changes to encourage investment, and I think all that will also help us recover. As Uday said, it's still early days. I think in the next few months, CII will have a more definite view.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Uday, you got anything to add on that?
No, I just wanted to say that, Indian business is very enthused by the PM's confidence and encouragement to Indian business to invest. And I think I would recommend to Indian business that, especially at a time like this, the thing about opportunity is it never knocks on the door. It's only after it has moved that you realize there was an opportunity. And therefore, I think we must take the cue from the PM's encouragement and his conviction that India must become a manufacturing hub. Make in India is a very important objective at a time when, I think, as we have discussed, China is having its challenges in its positioning. Therefore, let's grab this opportunity. Let's make investments happen. And Narendran talked about the steel industry. I'm really impressed by the way the steel industry has got its production up even at this time. And to the extent that the demand in India is taking time, the steel industry has been bold enough to go out and export its steel. It's been sending it to Vietnam, Southeast Asia, even China in terms of exports. Therefore, keep the production going, even if it means export part of your way out. Even though export realizations may be a little lower than domestic prices, keep the factory and the boiler engaged. And I think that's the way Indian industry has to think in the short run and long run. I think this is a time for thinking about investment. And Prime Minister has given us support, and we must take advantage of it. And the reforms which have come, including in the package, are all significantly driving supply side initiatives for Indian business and industry.
Thank you. Thank you, Uday. Thank you. We have now NDTV's Himanshu Shekhar. Himanshu,
you can hear me, sir, now?
Yeah.
Yes.
जी. उदय कोटक सर, दो सवाल थे. पहला सवाल यह है कि कॉमर्स मिनिस्टर पीयूष गोयल ने एक महत्वपूर्ण बयान दिया है, एक वीडियो कॉन्फ्रेंस किया उन्होंने रियल एस्टेट डेवलपर्स के साथ मुंबई में, जिसमें उन्होंने उनको सलाह दी है कि वो वेट ना करें मार्केट में सुधार का और उनकी जो प्रॉपर्टीज हैं, जो इन्वेंट्री है, उसको सेल करना शुरू करें. मैं उनका एग्जैक्ट कोट बताता हूं जो मुझे लगता है महत्वपूर्ण है, जो आपने बयान दिया है. If any of you here feels that government will be able to finance in such a way that you can hold longer and wait for the market to improve, market is not improving in a hurry. Things are seriously stressed and your best bet is to sell. ये सलाह उन्होंने दी है. और दूसरा एक छोटा सवाल इसी से जुड़ा था कि सेंटर फॉर मॉनिटरिंग इंडियन इकोनॉमी ने अपनी लेटेस्ट रिपोर्ट में ये कहा है कि करीब 21 मिलियन जॉब, 2 करोड़ 10 लाख नौकरियां वापस आई हैं, लेकिन 10 करोड़ से ज्यादा लोग अब भी बेरोजगार हैं. तो ये रोजगार का जो संकट है वो कितना बड़ा है आपको लगता है, और कब तक सुधार की उम्मीद?
First of all, I am in complete agreement with Piyush Goyal's statement on the real estate sector. I will recommend every real estate player to move the inventory and make it clear the stock they have. They should not be looking at the rear view mirror in driving a car. When you're driving a car, look at the screen in front of you. Piche kya tha is a wrong way of going forward. Therefore, real estate industry must clear its inventory. And remember the positive side of this. बहुत से लोग ऐसे थे जिनको घर ओन करना महंगा था. Now, if the prices drop, people who had not bought homes for decades and the price drop is significant, you will get new home buyers who have otherwise struggled to buy. Look at the positive side of lower prices for homes. And the reality is, if I have bought land at a high price in the past, it is irrelevant for my decision today. I have to take the pain. Back to my point, that pain will have to be taken, clear the inventory. And if we can create a consumer market back where people buy homes at affordable prices, it is good for all Indians. And it will create thereafter fresh investment for future capacity. But immediately clear the inventory, I completely share with him. And the point which you said about jobs, I mean, that is one of the points which we have got in our 10-point agenda, the future of jobs and social security. We have talked about it. I think it is one of the important challenges we have to deal with. We will have to understand that there are many sectors where jobs have gone. And there are many sectors where new jobs will come. Ye rebalancing ka time hai. And when this rebalancing is happening, we have to find way of navigating our boat between loss of jobs and potential creation of new jobs.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll move to Surya Murthy of Telegraph. Surya Murthy, please, you need to unmute yourself. Just unmute yourself. You're still on mute. Yeah. You're still on mute. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you can hear me now.
Yeah.
Mr. Kotak, you had talked about out-of-the-box thinking in your address. What would be your out-of-the-box thinking idea to the government and the corporate?
Yeah, I think in many ways we have laid it down. We have said dramatically increase spending on healthcare, dramatically increase spending on education, dramatically focus on Mother Nature. Therefore, this is not normally what businessmen would ask for. We are saying build India for the future. And it is a challenge for us. And if we have to do that out of box, it is now. Think about healthcare as the defense spending for India. Just as we have a large spending on military and Indian defense, think about spend on healthcare, building our healthcare foundation. If you go in this COVID era, one country in Europe which stood out for managing COVID better than any other European country was Germany. It had the best healthcare system amongst all European countries. So we need to be able to say that our healthcare, which is currently struggling, we spend 1.3% of GDP. That number in developed countries is in some cases close to double digit. So where are we? And if we have to spend for the future, we have to be careful that we need to spend with a long, medium-term vision to transform this country. And healthcare, education, and Mother Nature are the out-of-the-box thoughts which CII is committed to in this year of transformation, which is the COVID, post-COVID, and after-COVID era, which we'll see ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. The next, yeah, you have a subsequent question, please.
Thing is, right now, is the industry shying from investment, or the banks are averse to lending? What is that a dichotomy, or what is the situation like?
I think it's both. A lot of industry, we as banks, for industries where we are ready to lend, many of them are saying we don't want money. Okay. And where banks are cautious, those companies want money. Where we are worried about the quality of the balance sheet of some of those companies. So it is like classic situation where companies to whom, or businesses to whom we are ready to give money, they are shying away from investment. And companies which are going through a tough time and where we are not clear about their future are very anxious. So getting that balance is important.
मेरा question हो गया.
Yeah, how to break this deadlock?
No, on this, I think media can play a major role in actually building a positive sentiment. I would strongly encourage media. We all have challenges. COVID is a once in a century event. Okay. We are all living through this. We cannot get away from the fact that a little virus has changed our lives. But we must have the courage and confidence to say that we will have a positive mindset to think about India post-COVID or after COVID, as we say, and have the courage of taking some risk bets in the economy.
Thank you.
Chandrajit?
Yeah, Srini of Nayanam Vikatam, would you ask your question? Srini? Just unmute yourself, Srini. Just unmute yourself. You're still on mute. Yeah.
Congratulations to all office new bearers. My question is, SME needs a lot of support from banks. They want loans, but banks are hesitant to give. What is your solution, please?
I must just share with you the government guarantee scheme of 3 lakh crores is beginning to work as I talk to you. And those 3 lakh crores will be available for the MSME sector, and banks are ready and willing to give money under that scheme. So in the next few months, June, July, August, September, I think the scheme is up to October, but may get used probably even before that. I see 3 lakh crores coming from banks and NBFCs to the MSMEs, and that will significantly give support to MSMEs to come back. And as Sanjiv also mentioned, in addition to that, there is a capital infusion scheme. There's a support by SIDBI, there is support by NABARD, various other agencies. to go out there and give a support to micro, small and medium enterprises. You also are aware that the government has changed the definition of MSME, which will also be helpful to get more people covered.
Thank you. Thank you. Next is Krishnanand Tripathi from the ETV. Krishnanand.
Yes, Mr. Kotak, this is Krishnanand Tripathi from ETV Bharat. I have two questions. My first question, that just 2 days back, Prime Minister addressed a CII meeting. You people must have been interacting with him. So what do you make of his thinking? What is he thinking of the country post-COVID? What is going on in his mind? What is your reading?
I think the Prime Minister is very positive about India's future. He actually made a statement at that meeting saying, I trust in the industry leaders like all of you. And that's why I am saying, yes, we will get our growth back. We will create an Atmanirbhar Bharat. And that is, and government has also said, we are standing by industry and to see that we get growth back together. I think it's a very positive mindset. And the Prime Minister took this opportunity at the 125 years of CII to give a big boost to the mindset of business and industry.
I get your point, sir. This was already reported. In any case, I have second question. Government of India and state governments, they have been trying very hard to attract those companies that are trying to relocate their manufacturing facilities out of China.
Yes.
And we have seen that some of the states have changed their labor laws through ordinances, and they have done away with most of the labor laws, which was resented by all the trade unions like C2 and even Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh. And they say that there is no evidence that liberal labor laws have resulted in increased investment. And even in case of China, they are signatory to most of the ILO guidelines. So do you think it is really needed, the kind of changes that have been brought about in the labor laws? Are they really needed? Because they are adversely impacting the labor in this country.
I think, let me answer the question by a factual statement. The fact of the matter is that private investment for the last few years has been lagging. So there could be a number of reasons for that. So we need to try and see what those reasons can be, which will spur investment back, because only investment will create sustainable jobs in this country. And therefore, there has to be an emphasis on reform. Having said that, as we have put in our 10 points, we also need to create a simultaneous social security system, that as we go to a more open economy on labor, there has to be a social security safety net which the state needs to have in place simultaneously. Therefore, it is two sides of the same coin in many ways. We need change for getting investment back, but we need to ensure that we create a social security framework in due course for ensuring that there is a fairness to the worker as well. So getting this both is important, and that's what I mean.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. The last two requests that I have, one is from Shishir Chaurasia, Navbharat Times, and that I'll follow that up with Rajkumar from Hyderabad. Shishir.
सर नमस्कार, आपको बधाई। पहले आपने सर, आई एम ऑडिबल?
Yes, you are audible.
हाँ सर, आपने अपने 10 पॉइंट एजेंडा में शामिल किया कि पहली बार भारत में रिवर्स माइग्रेशन हुआ है, लोग गांव चले गए हैं और अब इकोनॉमी खुलनी शुरू हुई है तो उद्योग जगत को मजदूरों की कमी हो गई है। खास करके विनिर्माण उद्योग जैसे सिविल कंस्ट्रक्शन हो गया, दिल्ली मेट्रो की साइट हो गई, या एनसीआर प्लान की जो बन रही है रैपिड मेट्रो, उसमें मजदूर नहीं मिल रहे हैं। इसी तरह इंडस्ट्रियल एरिया में भी मजदूर नहीं मिल रहे हैं। तो सर, गांव यदि चले जाएंगे तो गांव से कैसे वापस आएंगे, किस शर्तों पे आएंगे, इसके लिए सीआईआई कहां तक प्रयासरत है?
सबसे पहले, I think we must keep in mind that each Indian citizen is free to take his or her decision. देखो, अगर माइग्रेंट को वापस गांव जाना है, उनकी मर्जी है, and we at CII respect the individual's freedom of decision. So I think that is point number one. Point number two is, for this individual citizen in rural India, as I have said, this is a time for us to find opportunity in rural India thanks to broadband connectivity which has happened. Also, rural infrastructure, roads, agriculture transformation, number of policy changes have been announced by the government of India, including Essential Commodities Act, the APMC Act. So the reform process which the Prime Minister has put in place will unleash more opportunities in rural India. Simultaneously, urban India में जो requirement of people है, I think we must make it attractive for labor to come and take up a job. Therefore, it's back to years of neglect of many urban cities or metro cities. We have created slums, we have created very poor quality of life. In many parts, there has been a very short-term oriented policy by some businesses, which has been temporary employment with ability to hire and fire. Some of this will have to undergo fundamental change to get that human being to come and get him into the city, get him proper, reasonable facility for his living, to be able to make it worthwhile for that individual. Therefore, आज जो business और industry को issues आए हैं, ये बहुत साल से the quality and the condition of migrant labor in some of those areas is an issue. So you are getting to restart India, and we need to do it better this time, both in urban and rural India.
सर एक छोटा सा सप्लीमेंट्री सर, तो क्या सर उद्योग जगत अब गांव में जाके उद्योग धंधे लगाना शुरू करेंगे?
मेरे हिसाब से as CII we will encourage all our members to strongly consider the opportunity of India as a whole, and never before has this kind of opportunity happened where rural India has got quality trained manpower, many of it coming from urban India, available there. How do we create opportunity there? And that is a unique opportunity, and you have broadband world. So ab nahi to.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. So last question from Rajkumar. Rajkumar from Hyderabad. Rajkumar Mayakla. Rajkumar, आप unmute कर लीजिए. Please unmute yourself. I can see that you are still on mute. You are unable to get through, I think. Somehow you are still on mute. I can see that you are still on mute. You are unable to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Would you unmute yourself? Yeah.
So a lot of companies are looking for alternative locations for China to manufacture their products or their everything. So I mean, Telangana also requested central government to reform some of the laws, including labor law. Do you think that central government is to be more aggressive on that side?
I think the mood and the approach of the central government is extremely positive and growth oriented. The Prime Minister's speech is a amplification of his commitment to India's growth, and I think Telangana is a very positive state. It has also attracted a lot of business and industry, particularly in the services sector, and therefore if Telangana, I think, makes progress, I am confident that the government of India will be supportive.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks to everybody. In case any other final remarks. So there is one more question. Last one, Uday. I mean, this seems to be somebody who has been trying to get through but didn't. Still on the line, Pradeep Pandya from the CNBC Averse. Pradeep, unmute. Please unmute yourself. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Yes, I have.
Yes.
मिस्टर कोटक, जैसे कि मैंने सुना नरेंद्र साहब कह रहे थे और मिस्टर बजाज भी कि डिमांड स्टिमुलस बहुत स्ट्रांग नहीं है और इस वजह से ये चर्चाएं चल रही हैं कि जो रिकवरी होगी वो वी शेप होगी या यू शेप होगी या डब्ल्यू शेप होगी। आपकी इस पर क्या राय है? और दूसरी बात, देश के सारे निवेशक आपको बड़े ध्यान से सुनते हैं, उनके दिमाग में ये सवाल है कि मार्केट अपने लो से देखिए मार्च से अब तक 35% रिकवर हो गया है, पर इकोनॉमी की हालत अलग है। तो एक डिस्कनेक्ट देखने को मिल रहा है मार्केट और इकोनॉमी के बीच। इस पर आपकी क्या राय है?
नहीं, मेरे हिसाब से मार्केट जिस रीत से चल रही है, कॉर्पोरेट इंडिया और बिजनेस को बहुत बड़ा मौका है टू गेट कैपिटल एंड रेज कैपिटल एंड fortify themselves on managing risk. And I would strongly encourage people to take advantage of this opportunity in the weeks and months ahead. On the other hand, I would like to believe that finally the market may be seeing things which may not be evident today. And it is only over a period of time I will be able to answer you who is right and who is wrong. So few months down the line, we will see that one of them is right and one of them is wrong. So I wish the market is right, because then the market is expressing confidence and economy will be following. Having said that, we cannot look at the market and assume that economy is fine. We need hard work. We need commitment. We need to make the changes in our way we run our companies. We have to make changes at government policy. We need a whole host of things to do in the economic world, which will ensure that Indian economy is fine, not just because the markets are saying it is so. So I hope I am answering your question, but we will take a view over the next 3 to 6 months. And in these 3 to 6 months, we all, as players in building Indian economy, have to do the right things and get India's growth back. And we are very encouraged by the government's positive approach to Indian business and industry to get growth back.
पर आपका क्या अंदाजा है, U, V या W?
मेरे हिसाब से we will do it the Indian way, and there will be an Indian alphabet which will be better than U, V or W.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, friends. Thank you very much, all our media friends, for attending this. Very, very grateful for your enthusiastic participation. We will circulate the theme paper immediately at this point in time, the theme that Mr. Uday Kotak spoke about. That will be, and we'll also, of course, send the press release to each one of you that you have attended. So once again, thank you, and we look forward to your continued engagement throughout the year. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.